Hello, everybody. This is Mike Nelson for the Mike Nelson Show. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure to subscribe right now. Today, I got the legendary drummer Carmine Appice. How you doing today, Carmine?
Good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good. First question: when did your musical journey all begin, Carmine?
What is it, what?
When did your musical journey begin?
Well, it started when I was a kid. My cousin played drums. I used to go to his house and bang on the drums, and then bang on pots and pans. And then I got a drum set. And then I played for a while. Then I took lessons. Then I got another drum set. Then I played gigs around New York City. I played all kinds of gigs. I played weddings, bar mitzvahs, rock gigs, jazz gigs. And then I ended up in this group called the Pigeons, which ended up being the Vanilla Fudge, and Vanilla Fudge went on to Cactus and Beck, Bogert and Appice and Rod Stewart and Ted Nugent and Ozzy, and just kept going. I keep pushing. People ask me what I do for a hobby. This is it.
Why did you pick up the drums, Carmine?
Like I said, my cousin had drums, and I used to go over there and play on his drums, and I used to like it, then go home and bang on the pots and pans. So it was just, something that I liked. And when I was a kid and I started playing, my parents saw the ambition for me to play, and they bought me a set of drums. I mean, I used to get these toy drums for Christmas and stuff, but I used to destroy them, And then later on, I started destroying real drum sets.
Yeah.
But that's where it came from. On my father's side of the family, I think there's 7 drummers.
Wow. 7 drummers. Wow. So what's the story? How did you finally end up in Vanilla Fudge? Can you tell me the story behind that?
Well, as I said, I played around New York City, and they were called the Pigeons. There was a new kind of vibe going on, like doing arrangements, and they needed somebody who was technical. And they came to a club I was playing at and saw me play, and they said, "Look, we need a drummer who could sing, who could play technical, and has a great right foot. And it seems like you're it. I'd like for you to check it out." So, I mean, I had a band going that I didn't really have to go with them because I wasn't really into making it, like record wise. I was just into making a living, And I went out and played with them, and it was awesome. So I joined them. They were Pigeons, and we'd go around, and we had a manager that paid a salary, small salary to us, so we were able to just rehearse and come up with great arrangements. And we did You Keep Hanging On, and we noticed that everybody used to watch us play that song. They try and dance to the other song. But whenever we played You Keep Hanging On, they came up to the front of the stage and watched the craziness going on there. And that's what started it all, Keep Hanging On the charts. I joined the band. 9 months later, we were on the charts.
It's good. So I was like playing in a band in the 1960s, with the rock and roll being focused down in England with the Beatles and the Stones. I was like playing, rock and roll out here in the States with all that going on in England.
Well, I was playing R&B, when the Beatles first came in, I thought they were a joke. They're like a teeny bopper band, the girls screaming and songs like I Want to Hold Your Hand. I was into like James Brown and Otis Redding and with horns and all the R&B stuff, Hold On, I'm Coming, Sam and Dave, and Midnight Hour, Wilson Pickett. So when the Beatles came out with that, I Want to Hold Your Hand, I thought it was garbage, Later on, I realized what good songs they were, And I wasn't into songwriting then. I was into just playing R&B. I never really got into the Beatles until Vanilla Fudge was playing a place in Newport, Rhode Island, and we were coming up with arrangements, and we started listening to the Revolver record, and that record's the one that turned us around, So it was that, and then we started listening to the Stones, and they did some great records back in the 60s.
Now, why were there mainly all covers on the first 2 records for Vanilla Fudge?
Well, that's what the thing was. It wasn't about songwriting in New York City in those days. Big bands like Leslie West had a band called the Vagrants, and they would pack in 2,000 or 3,000 people into my manager's club, and they did arrangements on songs. They slowed them down. We used to call them production numbers. So that's what we were doing. We were doing production numbers, but we took it one step further. We matched the lyric to the mood of the music. You take like You Keep Hanging On, it's a fast song. It sounds happy, but it wasn't happy lyrically. Eleanor Rigby that we did, we matched the music to the eerie sounds of the lyrics. People Get Ready, same thing. It was very gospel-y. It was a churchy song. So we made it sound gospel-y. So actually, all the parts that we wrote into our arrangements, they were original musical parts, you know? And, but we never viewed it as that. We viewed it as one big song. You know, the song actually starts where the melody and the lyrics start. All the stuff building up to it, in and out, like Eleanor Rigby, there's parts in 6/8, there's parts in 3/4, which is very progressive for that era, you know. And you know, and then when the song starts, that's where the song starts. But all the intros and outros, and some parts in the middle, was our music, you know. But we didn't write songs, and we never claimed our arrangements to be musical names, which we could have. Like You Keep Me Hanging On, we had the whole intro attached to what we call Illusions of My Childhood. So now it's one big original song of ours. You know, until Set Me Free, Why Don't You, Babe starts, the rest of it's our music.
Now, let's fast forward to the third record, Renaissance. You had a lot of own material on this record, and production was a lot better. Can you tell me the transition of moving into that third record, you know, how the band advanced to that?
Well, the second record was a stupid thing to do. The second record was a concept record that we were young. We were 20 years old. We didn't know what we were doing. The producer and Armin Erdogan, who owned Atlantic Records, they wanted us to do this concept record, but it's too soon. We should have done it like 5 years later, you know? So that record was a bomb for us, you know, meaning bad. Not in England, a bomb means great. You know? It was a bomb for us, and we had to rush in and do something to save ourselves. So we went and rushed in and did Renaissance. And so many people were journalists saying, they don't write their own music. They don't write their own music. So we were writing music, and we did that first album. Renaissance was the first album that we did of our own songs. You know, I wrote a song on it called Faceless People. You know, I didn't know what I was doing, you know, I just wrote it, and people liked it, but you know, compared to what I know now about songwriting, it wasn't a very good song, you know. And as far as production goes, the bass was too loud on everything. You couldn't hear the rest of it. So I think when we did the next album, Near the Beginning, is a really good production. And we wrote this song called The Break Song, which is, you know, some melody, and it showcased us as soloists, you know. And, you know, then we went on to start thinking about another band, because the organ music seemed to be going away, and guitar music was coming in, you know, with Led Zeppelin and the Jeff Beck group, and 10 Years After, and all those kind of bands. So that's when we put our group Cactus together.
Let's talk about the transition of music. You know, Vanilla Fudge released 5 albums in 3 years. So you think that project wasn't going to last then? You think it was going to be a short project when you were doing it?
No, we didn't know that. But that was the deals you made with the record companies. So you had to do 2 albums a year.
Wow.
You know, and so that was it. It wasn't up to us. It was up to the record deal. You know, if you look at everybody back then, they did 2 albums pretty much.
So Cactus formed after this. Can you tell me how that started? How that kicked off? How you start forming that band?
We were friends with Jeff Beck. He played on a Vanilla Fudge Coke commercial because our guitar player was sick, and with him playing on it, we said, "Wow, this is really great." Me and Tim loved it, and then we found out when we did a gig with Jeff Beck group that John Bonham and Led Zeppelin jammed with Jeff Beck, and Bonzo came back to me and said, "Jeff Beck wants to play with you guys." And me and Tim said, "Wow, we want to play with him too." So that was going to be Cactus, and Rod Stewart was going to be in it as well. But then Rod didn't want to work with Jeff. And just before Jeff came over to talk about it, he had a car accident, which put him behind 18 months. And we already broke Vanilla Fudge up to do this. So we said, what do we do now? So we said, well, we had the name Cactus, and we wanted to still do it. So we got Rusty Day from the Amboy Dukes, and Jim McCarty from Detroit Wheels and Buddy Miles Express. And the concept back in those days was to do like what you call supergroups. So this was a super group, would have been a bigger super group with Jeff Beck and Rod Stewart, but we still ended up being a super group, and Cactus did really well, influenced a lot of bands, and it was more of an underground band. It never really had the hit single,
Now, one way or another, one of my favorite albums of all time. Can you tell me the story behind that record?
Well, it was our second record, and we wanted to do it at Jimi Hendrix studio because we were friends with Jimmy. And he had just opened that studio, and we went down, and Jimmy was in the back room recording, and we were in the front room, And so we did like we always did. We set up live, and we played the songs that we rehearsed at my manager's rehearsal place in Long Island. And we went in, we had Eddie Kramer, who is famous for all the Jimi Hendrix stuff, and he engineered a lot of the stuff, and Dave Palmer engineered it, and George Harrison came into the sessions. We met George over there, and one way or another, it's a great song. I'm doing a Cactus album now. It's called Cactus Influences and Friends. And on one way or another, I got Doug Pinnick playing bass and Doug Pinnick singing, and Ted Nugent's on that track.
Wow.
From Parchment Farm, I got Billy Sheehan playing bass, me on drums, Jim McCarty on guitar, the new singer we have in Cactus singing, playing harmonica, and we got Joe Bonamassa playing the solos.
Really?
So the whole album is like that. We're doing all the old songs with new combinations of people. We got it's just really cool. It's really coming out great. It's going to be out next year.
Wow, definitely looking forward to hearing that.
Cactus was an influence on Van Halen, on AC/DC, on King's X, and many, many other bands. Dee Snider got Evil being played by Doug Pinnick on bass, Jim McCarty on guitar, and Dee Snider singing it.
Wow.
So I realized how many people were influenced by Cactus. Warren Haynes from Government Mules on it, playing the blues. It's awesome. It's really becoming a great album.
Now, I wasn't around back then, but do you think this was the golden era for rock and roll music, like the early 70s, late 60s? There was a lot of bands coming out, music seemed more freeform.
Totally. Yeah. Up to like the mid 80s. And then all the LA glam stuff, even though I was part of with King Cobra, I tried to King, like all my groups that I have, I always try to put the element of the 70s in there, where it's jamming and everything's not exactly the same, like a lot of the bands in the 80s. Here's a drum part for the verse and the pre-chorus and the chorus, and every time is the same. I always had jamming going on with my bands, but I think the late 60s into like the early 80s, like you had Dio, that was a great band, bands like Dio, Rainbow, late 70s into the early 80s, Whitesnake, those kind of bands were leftovers that went into the 80s from the 70s, But
You think you guys had more freedom?
It was definitely the foundation of the rock era.
Do you think you guys had more freedom back then to do what you wanted? Is that why music was more, jam?
Without a doubt. When with Cactus and BBA, Jeff Beck, Bogert, Appice, you didn't even write the song for the song. You wrote the song for the jam.
Wow. Now let's talk about Beck, Bogert, Appice. Of course, that was your next project. You originally wanted to play with Jeff Beck a year and a half earlier, a few years earlier. When did you finally get this project done? How did that happen?
Well, he was on the road with the Jeff Beck group, and we got a message from him saying that he wanted me and Tim to join the tour because he didn't like what's happening. He always wanted to play with us, blah, blah, blah. So we went on the tour with him. We were still playing with Cactus. So like we would do 2 weeks with Jeff Beck, and then we'd have a few days off. We did Cactus gigs, to taper down the Cactus thing with us. And then we ended up giving it to my keyboard player, Dwayne Hitchings, and Mike Panera, and they went out as a son of Cactus. And then me and Tim joined Jeff Beck. First tour was Jeff Beck group. Second tour was Jeff Beck group featuring me and Tim and Jeff. And the third time we went to America and started touring, we did Beck, Bogert, and Appice, we did the album. And it went good for a while. And then we could never get the energy for the second album, and get the songs that we wanted. It never happened. We tried to work with Sly Stone. We tried all these different things. And we ended up recording it live. But before that live album came out, the band broke up because yeah, just Tim was not easy bass player to play with, when it comes to guitar players, because he played lead bass all the time. A lot of guitar players, it happened with McCarty, it happened with Jeff. They want that foundation of a groove, and Tim would do that, and then he'd go off on his own thing. But we do have a surprise coming out in September with BBA, so I'm not allowed to talk about it yet, but there's something really great coming out with that.
Does that have to do with the live album?
I'm not going to say.
Okay. Okay. Now, with the project you guys did, this one album, did you personally want it to continue though? Would you want to keep playing with the two
I
other
did
guys?
continue. When it broke up, I continued with Jeff. I stayed in England for 3 months, and I was working on what was come to be Blow by Blow with Jeff, and we couldn't work out a deal with the record company, so the performances I did, they took off, and they added somebody else on it, and I was kind of pissed off at the time because it went out and did really well, and I would have been with Jeff playing really well, but I wouldn't have been Beck Bogert, Beck Appice. It would have been Jeff Beck, period. No featuring or anything. So my managers didn't want me to do that. But in the end, it worked out better because a couple of years later, I was playing with Rod Stewart, and then I co-wrote some of a couple of Rod's biggest hits, and in that band, it was Rod Stewart was the guy, and then after him was me. I was the most famous guy there. So I got a lot of mileage out of being with Rod for 7 years.
Now, with that record that you recorded with Jeff Beck and Tim Bogert, was that recorded fairly quick? It has a good live feel. How was that album
Well,
made?
the first one was recorded at Chess Records, and yeah, I think we recorded all the tracks and everything within 3 weeks.
Wow.
And we did the vocals and mix. It was probably done with 6 weeks.
Really?
Unlike the next record, which we recorded twice and then ended up doing it live.
Now, with the recent loss of Jeff Beck, thoughts on him and his legacy, and what do you think his impact was on music for Jeff Beck?
He's the best guitar player. He made the guitar talk. As he got older, he got better. It's like all of us, I think. As you get older, you get more tasteful, you get better. And when we played with him, we were all animals. We went for it. When solo came, we went for it. Now you listen to Jeff. He's like plays broken. He makes the guitar talk. That's what I like about the guy Fernando in this new project. He plays similar to Jeff in that way, where he doesn't just keep playing, like going, building, keep going. He breaks in the solos, and the guitar actually speaks to you, rather than just
Now, let's fast forward to the 80s. You got to play with Ted Nugent, the 1982 Nugent album. How was it like working with Ted in the 80s?
That was great. I always loved Ted. He was managed by our manager for a long time, so I knew him for a long time, And the way I went with Ted, we were doing an award show with Rod, and he said, "Hey, Carmine, when you're done playing this wimpy rock and you want to play a man's rock, give me a call." So after I left Rod, I called Ted and went right in with Ted. And we went on the road, and we had a lot of fun. The album, I wasn't crazy about the drum sound on the album. We recorded it at my friend's studio, Pasha, which released my solo album in '82. And I fixed the drum sound there. And when we did King Cobra and we did Vanilla Fudge there, and they did Quiet Riot's record there with the new drum sound that we created.
Now, playing with Nugent in the 80s, was it a little difficult with the changing music? Were you guys still playing in front of big crowds? How was it like back then?
Yeah, we were still playing in front of like 10,000 people.
Okay.
8,000 people. It was still big.
Now, after this, you toured with Ozzy. How was that?
Well, it was good until Sharon ended it. She said to me, "Your name is too big. You need to start your own band." So, but it was great. The crowds were big. I was doing a lot of press. I was doing, giving money I was doing master classes in every market. I gave money to charities, and she didn't like that. And I was getting a lot of press, and my drum solos were getting great reactions. I even had my own merch on the tour. That was her. She set the deal up with my manager at the time. But in the end, she didn't like it, so she fired me. I had to take him to court.
Do you think you would have, stayed on Ozzy for the next album, The Ultimate Sin?
Definitely. I was planning to stay on Ozzy like I did with Rod. Help produce records, help drum sounds, help write songs. Because I was a name songwriter at that point. You know, it's, only a couple of years after Rod Stewart's Young Turks, which was #4 in all the charts around the world, and Sexy was #1 and 3 years before that. So I was pretty, ongoing songwriter at the time. So
Now, I recently interviewed one of your former bandmates from Blue Murder, Marco Mendoza. Thoughts on that project that you did later on?
Well, he wasn't with me when I played with Blue Murder. It was Tony Franklin
Okay.
was the bass player, and I actually went after Blue Murder because I love Sykes and I love Tony, and then I heard Cozy Powell was with him, and then I heard Cozy left, so I went to England with my brother when my brother Vinny was playing. I figured whoever knew how to get a hold of Blue Murder would be there, and I was right. And I called them and I went up and I played with the guys, and they said, "If you want it, you got it." So I wanted it, I got it, and we did that first album. Cost a fortune. We went up to Canada and we got a great killer drum sound, and we came up with great songs and great grooves and great parts. I actually recorded my drum part twice to a click, and one of them I was drunk, and the Jelly Roll, and I just loved doing it, and I loved the band. I just loved the band. We went to Japan, we killed it in Japan. We didn't have a great tour over here, and then by the second album, we were kind of breaking up because what do you call that? Grunge came in, and it didn't do well for the old players like us. We were known as dinosaurs then, Now they call us legends. But we were dinosaurs, and nobody wanted to know from us. It was all about Nirvana and Soundgarden and all that,
Yep. So let's fast forward to today. You got a new project, Appice Perdomo. You got a new record, Running Up the Hill. You talk to me about that?
Well, we just started out. I met the guy on a phone call from a friend of mine, and I had a studio I just put together in my house when I moved, and I didn't know how to run it really, So when he called, when she called, she said, "Give him a call." So I gave him a call, and we talked about it. So I sent him some tracks, and then he sent me the tracks back with him playing on it, and it sounded killer. So I put drums on it. I sent him another track. He did that. Then he sent me a track, and I did that. And then before you know, we had 12 tracks done like that. And I said, "Well, let's put it out." So the first album came out, and it got rave reviews from a lot of critics, 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, 4 out of 5. But, the record company just threw it out because I asked them to. We didn't get paid a lot of money for it. It was just for fun. So we started doing the same thing, And then the last song we did was that Kate Bush song, because I heard it so many times on Stranger Things that I watched that I said, maybe we should do a heavy rock instrumental version of that just for fun. And we did it, and it came out really awesome. I found myself, when I got the track from Fernando, I wanted to keep this jungle vibe going. So I didn't hit cymbal rides or hi-hat once through the whole song. I played on the floor tom-tom through the whole song. And I only used the cymbals for power changes or different, chord changes and stuff. And then I found when I finished listening to it, I want to hear it again. So I heard it again and again. I loved the groove. So we did that, and then we decided to call the album that because it was the last song, and we did a video for it. We made the video look like Stranger Days. The video is I think it's becoming available yesterday or today, so you'll be getting a link for it, I think, through Chip. And then we started writing the other songs like Drum City. That's the next song coming out, and we got an amazing video with that, and that'll be out in about 3 weeks. And we played our first gig last night ever in New York, and we killed it. It was a little too loud, but we killed it. I mean, everyone was cheering. They were blown away. It was like a free show in the cutting room as a record promotion for the band, for the album. And so we ran the videos the whole time behind this and before we started. Yeah, so I love it. I love Fernando. Fernando reminds me a lot, as I said before, of Jeff Beck a bit because he makes the guitar talk. He's into sounds. He's into not just straight. He also plays bass. He plays guitar, plays bass, drums, keyboard. So basically, on a lot of the album where the guests are noted, if it ain't the guest, it's Fernando. You know, so he would give me a track with bass, drums, keyboard, and guitar, you know, and a click, and I would have something to play. Because sometimes we wrote, interestingly, I would give him a drum track, and he would write to the drum track. So like Drum City was done like that. Another song called Fu Manchu, which is named after my mustache. You know, that was started by a drum track. On the first album, there were 2 or 3 songs started with the drum track. So it's an interesting way to write versus the other way, you know. And he likes it. He goes, you know, I could feel when the change is coming by listening to what you're playing. And then I think there's, you know, it needs to change here, or the chord change here, or by the cymbal hits, you know. So it's very, very cool. So we're going to just continue this because it's easy. I got my studio in LA, in my house. He's got a studio in LA. And we keep exchanging stems, and we can write, you know, for the next 10 years like that.
So last night's show was a pay-per-view show, right? People could still buy it online?
Yeah, it was a call. Meat Hook put it on pay-per-view just for people that couldn't make it to New York. I don't know. Did you see it by chance?
No, I haven't. But I'm just saying people could still buy it for a whole month, I think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, you know, it was our first gig, but it was great. The audience loved it. We loved playing it. We only did 4 songs, and then we did a tribute to Jeff Beck and Tim Bogert. We did Superstition, and we brought up Richie from Billy Joel's band on sax, and we brought up this conga player. I can't remember his name. He was with Spyro Gyro. They all played with us with Superstition, and I had Artie Dillon on guitar. He plays in Cactus. James Caputo on guitar. James Caputo on bass. He plays with Cactus. And my friend Benny Harrison, who plays with the Rascals, and Tommy James on keyboards, a great keyboard player, and Fernando. And it was great. It was killer.
Now you got next week a show with the Whiskey A Go-Go, right, in LA?
That's right. Yeah, we do. We're going to
Looking forward to that.
Yeah, I land there tomorrow, and tomorrow night we go into a rehearsal hall. But those guys are going to play with us, so we can rehearse the songs, and then Tuesday night we're going to go in and play it.
You can ask a special guest next week then at the show?
Well, Chuck, it's Chuck Wright's jam. He has a jam there all the time. So he has special guests coming in with a special guest.
special.
He's going to play with us. And then every week he has other people come in. So we're going to stay, I'm going to, if Fernando wants, we're going to stay on and play like Hot Legs and, you know, maybe Bark at the Moon or something, you know. But we're going to do 3 of our songs, and then we're going to do whatever other jams we're going to do. And the label's going to have a person at the door giving out flyers in the old days of pictures of the album cover. And I'm going to go on KLOS on Monday, I believe, to promote it. So, you know, it's going well. I'm doing a lot of these interviews. You're probably the 30th one I've done in 3 days. I got another one after you. So.
All right, yeah. So last couple of questions here to go. Where can people find the record, or you know, where can people stream this record? Where can people find this?
Well, normal, you know, Amazon. The album don't come out till May 26th, but you can go on iTunes and you can get the single. And I believe, like I said, a lot of people are going to be putting up the YouTube link for the first video. I'm not sure if it's up yet. You could ask Chipster if it's up yet, you know, and you know, all the normal platforms, as they say. I'm sure it'll be on Spotify, which I'm not you know, I'm not crazy about Spotify. They rip, as far as I'm concerned, it rips all those guys off. But that's how they do it today.
That's how it is. Last question here: what's your advice to young drummers out there?
Well, just if you can take lessons, practice, and you know, practice. I mean, you really got to practice what you want to do. If you want to play drums, you got to practice it. You want to be a painter, you got to practice it. Anything you want to do, you got to practice it. So, but I advise taking lessons. You'll get to where you want to go quicker.
All right. I want to thank you for your time, Carmine. It was great talking to you.
Thank you, man.
All right. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Ciao. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.